Welcome back to the next segment of our interview with Professor Minqi Li. And today we talk about the global energy crisis in China. Welcome, Professor Minqi.
Thank you.
We're told we're reaching peak oil. Some people debate that concept. They say there's still lots of oil. But one way or the other, the issue of the energy consumption, climate change crisis, and the geopolitics of oil is determining most of what's happening in the world right now. What is China's role in this?
Well, very big role. It's China's oil consumption grows very, very rapidly, accounting for about 1/3 of the incremental oil consumption that has happened since about 2000. And so China's oil consumption right now is probably already 10% of the world's total oil consumption. The US accounts for about 20 to 25%, I guess 25%, but China's is growing very rapidly. And moreover, that is taking place at the moment when there's growing evidence that probably that the world oil production has reached its historical peak. China's growth in oil consumption accounts for about 1/3 of the world's incremental oil consumption that has happened since 2000. And now China's oil consumption already accounts for about 10% of the world's total oil consumption. And the US accounts for about 25%, but China is growing very rapidly. And that is taking place moreover at the moment when we probably at the peak, overall peak of the global oil production, or very near to that. And so you have this growing demand from China and some other emerging economies against the background of stagnating, a possible declining supply of global oil production in the future. And so that definitely a major factor behind the current global energy crisis.
Is China putting much resources into alternative energy development?
China is making lots of effort, and China currently has a goal to increase its wind power generating capacity to about 200 gigawatt. To give you some idea, that's about 20 to 30% of China's current electricity generating capacity. So China has a goal to increase the wind capacity to 200 gigawatt by 2020. However, this is just one of many aspects of China's rapid growth. China's coal consumption is also growing very rapidly. And in the first half of 2008, China's coal production increased by an annual rate of 15%. That's very, very rapid rate. And moreover, the wind starts from a very small base. And so any rapid growth of renewable energy basically is canceled out by the rapid growth of fossil fuels.
There's a group in Washington and a circle of thinking that in the long term sees the fundamental strategic enemy, rival of the United States is China. And many people there, including in the Democrats and in the Republican Party, they say that foreign policy issues should all be worked back from the question of someday in a more real contentious relationship with China. And in that respect, there's a conversation that takes place about the strategic control of oil. Most of China's oil, as I understand it, comes from the Middle East, increasingly from Africa, even from Latin America. All regions where the Americans have usually had a dominant position. And in many of these areas now, China is already a serious rival, economic rival, not military. To what extent is China concerned about a kind of encirclement of China when it comes to oil?
Well, obviously, China is a potential big power. And so there's some, you can have some understanding about these concerns among certain circles of US ruling elites with respect to this. But on the other hand, it's very interesting. The relationship between American capitalism and the Chinese capitalism now is very interesting. China is probably the major support behind the US dollar right now. China holds about near $2 trillion of the foreign exchange reserves, mostly in the US dollar. And if not because of China keep buying the US dollar would be in free fall. The US economy would collapse. But on the other hand, for China to provide this kind of support to the U.S. Capitalism, China has to consume, of course, it has to consume energy, it has to consume oil, and that in turn results in conflict with the U.S. own demand for oil. So I don't know how these two different ruling elites are going to get out of this dilemma.
Well, the next segment of our interview, let's discuss the growing entanglement of China and the U.S. deficit. Please join us for the next segment of our interview with Professor Minqi Li.